Thank you for joining another episode here of Hooked on Diesel. Today, I have our special guest, Jacob White. Jacob, how the hell are you?
I'm great, Paul. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. Jacob, I've obviously had a chance to interview you and talk with you on my old show. And now being here,
Yeah.
this is your first time joining us with Hooked on Diesel, sponsored by Dirty Hooker Diesel. Just in case there's anybody new to this forum who's never heard of you before, give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So Jacob White, I am the brand manager for Edge Products currently. I've been in this role for about 5 years, a little over 5 years, but I've been in the diesel industry since about 2006. So in some fashion, I've been doing stuff with diesel trucks for, almost 20 years now. So seen the industry change a lot in that time. Obviously started just like everybody does in this industry, had my own truck, started modifying it, and it kind of blossomed into a career, basically. It was once a hobby, and I was able to figure out how to make it a lifestyle and career out of it. And here I am 20 years later and still pushing along, loving every minute of it. So
that's so cool. 20 years, man. Yeah, wow. You're one of the true OGs in this industry. I love to hear it.
I don't know about that, but there's definitely some guys that are still around that were in it before I was, but definitely been doing it a while.
I think what's awesome is that you've had the chance to, like you said, move over to Edge. You were there for a little while, and then as brand manager, you guys have been able to be a part of this kind of what do we do after the EPA came in and shook things up, right? So the EPA started coming in pretty hard around 2013, started hitting some of the bigger companies. I know Edge caught some of that early on. And nowadays, everybody has caught some of that, right? Like back when Edge first got hit, we thought maybe that would be it. And then all of a sudden, it's like down to small mom and pop install shops have had visits now.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, Edge obviously played in that world and the performance world. 2007, 2008, when DPFs were coming around, Edge offered some race solutions back then. But then the EPA, like you said, started getting heavy. So Edge actually went through the rounds with the EPA in 2011.
Even earlier,
and paid a fine with the EPA in 2011, and the brand has been 100% emissions compliant ever since. So we've been playing in the emissions compliance space for almost 15 years now. So it's the everything that people are continuing to go through with the EPA is not new for the Edge brand. So it's been an interesting few years for sure. Some of that heat got really they got pretty hot and heavy over cracking down on that kind of stuff, which, unfortunately, we understand why people want to go that route. But we're dedicated to making sure we stay compliant and we offer performance solutions that are good for factory equipped trucks. And I think we've got some options that work really well and improve the drivability and increase the power. And, the way these new trucks run, there's not a lot of guys that are really, their top request isn't more power anymore because these trucks run so good off the showroom floor. So we really had to kind of change how we do business and what we offer to the consumer so that they can enjoy their truck even more than it is from the factory. But 15 years ago, that was the big thing, is that, man, this truck just needs more power. I just can't pull the grades, or you know what I mean? So putting a 70 horse or 100 horse tune was like the first thing guys wanted to do 15 years ago. But there's not a lot of owners that think their brand new truck needs another 100 horsepower anymore. So we've kind of had to shift the way we do business. But again, it's been fun, and we keep trying to push the envelope. Obviously, we're known for our Insight CTS3 monitor. That's our big namesake right now, and trying to offer the best monitoring solutions and diagnostics features, that kind of stuff. And then we've just ventured into the custom tuning space so that our CTS3 platform can be used to load custom calibrations into trucks. So we're trying to broaden what we can do with our hardware. Our inline module business has really taken off the last few years with these new trucks. We can do a lot of features with our modules. And they're nice because we're not flashing the ECM. So for those guys that are worried about factory warranties, you can plug an inline module in, get 50 to 60 horsepower over stock, modified tire sizes, TPMS sensors, that kind of stuff. But you can keep your factory warranty, because when it needs to go into the dealer for a service, you can unplug the module and there's no trace left. So we've had really good success with that in the new model year trucks the last few years. So
it is always wild to me to see the Edge's ability to innovate. Back in the day, Edge was always known for coming out with killer hardware, right? And whether you used Edge tuning or not, everybody used an Insight CTS3, no question. Best digital gauges on the market by far. So to see now this tuning stuff, obviously I have quite a bit of a background in tuning, and understanding the tuning industry. So I think as I've seen Edge come out with some of these solutions, it's great to see that you guys took what used to be kind of poked at as some of the weaknesses about being an inline module and flipping that to now being the positive. That's the feature, right? That's not the bug. That is the feature of the fact that it's not going to leave a trace on the ECU. These trucks, they're exponentially more expensive. I mean, we used to finance trucks for 5 years. A new truck, Duramax's came out probably 25, 30 grand. Now, here we are 20 years later, they're $100,000 if you want a badass one. Like if you want the fanciest one with all the features. So like if you have a 6-figure vehicle, factory warranty matters. Like it's a thing that's a big deal. But you guys haven't given up on making power. Like you said, it might not be the customer's first request, but it is still, I would imagine, an important factor into doing it. Can I ask, what is customers' most common first request when they have a new truck?
It depends on the truck they're driving. The late model Dodge guys, like the 1924 Dodge guys, their biggest complaint is usually that the truck feels like lethargic. And I think a lot of that's in the trans, the way that the ACE and trans works. Those trucks just don't feel like they accelerate like they should with that power plant that's under the hood. You know what I mean? Okay. So they feel kind of lazy and unresponsive and that kind of stuff. So like our EasyX module is simple plug and play and can completely change the way that Dodge drives stoplight to stoplight, towing your trailer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the big one with that. In the Ford space, those guys are, the new Fords are making a ton of power and torque. And those are the guys that don't really think they need any more power. So we've had to try and focus on some of the other features, some of the other things that we see in driving those trucks. A big thing like the new Super Duties, you can stuff a set of 37s under that truck with just a leveling kit, which means the speedometer is going to read incorrectly. For a lot of years, the ECM has only allowed you to flash tire sizes up to 35 inches. So with our inline module, the way we interpret the signals on the CAN bus line, we don't have that limitation that flash tuning does. So in a 17 to 22 and the 23 to current Fords here soon, we have the ability to do tire size all the way up to a 50-inch tire. So if you've got a 2022 Platinum and you stuff 37s under it, with our module, we can calibrate to speedo to be dead on. So stuff like that. The Chevys, they have a lot of pedal lag in them nowadays. So that's a big thing, is that the owners are complaining about the throttle response, the pedal lag. So it's a lot of the features and the way the truck drives that guys notice, not so much the power, because they can run 75 on cruise control towing their trailer. You know what I mean? So we have to look at the other things that we can improve and how that vehicle drives from the seat.
That's a great point. That it drills down to that experience, right? I mean, that's really, people pay money to solve problems. So the problem they're having is no longer, like you said, hook into a trailer and not being able to go up a hill. That's maybe like an L5D issue, like the 4500s and whatnot, but not in any of the normal 2500 or 3500 trucks.
Right.
These trucks, they have different, unique, each one of them kind of has their own thing. And I love that you guys are taking a look at those problems and coming up with real world practical solutions. But like I said, you haven't given up on power completely. You just had a huge post that's crushing in Facebook. Hundreds of comments, thousands of views. Run us through this. It's the 2025 dyno shootout.
Yeah. So for a couple of years ago, I think it was 2021, I posted the first one. We had all 2021 trucks that we have in our fleet. And we shared the dyno graph of all 3 trucks on one graph. And it kind of went viral back then. And so every year we've just been doing that. As soon as we get all 3 of the trucks in our fleet, we get them all on the dyno and see how they compare stock for stock for stock, And then we'll obviously compare them again once we have a tune in them of some kind. We'll go back and see how they compare with a module in them. But yeah, so we got our 2025 Cummins with that all new ZF 8 speed. We got that truck about a month ago, so we've already started poking and prodding at that one. We've got about 1,500 miles on that truck and decided it was time to put it on the dyno and see what happened. So we put it on the dyno 2 days ago, and that was our third and final 2025 truck to get some numbers out of. So we were able to compile the dyno charts from our 25 PowerStroke HO and our 25 L5P Duramax, and now the 25 Cummins with the new engine and transmission, the new drivetrain. So we shared that yesterday with the results, and it always goes viral. People are always so interested to see, everybody's a fanboy of something, and they want to know that their truck's the best, or that they spent their $100,000 wisely. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, but it brings out a lot of conversation. So yeah, I mean, it went viral. We posted that dyno chart yesterday at 10 a.m. And it's 10:45 now, so barely 24 hours, and we're at almost 700,000 views on that post. So it definitely went viral. But the big takeaway from the dyno chart itself is that the Ford is just a clear-cut winner. The Ram, without a doubt, has taken some big strides. That new transmission makes it a whole new truck to drive. I mean, it's completely different than the 24 model. I think they finally have a transmission that's going to allow them to do something and compete in this space. So that Ford, or the Ram and the GM, are right there neck and neck with each other. You can see the Ram makes more torque than the L5P does now, down low. But that Ford is still light years above power. I mean, the torque curve on that Ford is monstrous. Huge gains over the other two. You know what I mean? There was a lot of comments that, hey, that's not fair. You're using the HO Ford, but those aren't HOs in the Ram and the GM. Well, Ram and GM don't offer two versions anymore. The Ram is only available in the HO. Ford does still offer their standard output and the high output. So there was a lot of people griping that we used the HO on that chart. But it's really about the best of what each has to offer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With that said, we have dyno 24 standard output truck. We have a standard output Ford in our fleet that's a 24 model year. And on the same dyno, it makes 500 horsepower and 1080 torque. So it still blows the Dodge and the Ram out of the water. It makes about the same horsepower as the high output, but the high output makes over 100 foot-pounds torque more than the standard. But so we could add the standard output onto that chart so that everybody could see it. But it was about, if you're going to spend top dollar and buy the best truck that they offer, what are you going to get out of it? So there's also a lot of conversation that comes from it about, that just being a dyno chart. It doesn't necessarily equate to the real world, which is true. In a towing application on a 6% grade, your foot to the floor for 2 minutes, which one of them is going to get to the top of the hill first? You know what I mean? The most power doesn't always win that battle.
Yeah.
Which can be true. They can derate, they can get hot, engine oil temperatures, all that kind of stuff goes into factor. The ECM can pull fueling at any time if it needs to, because it thinks it's too hot. You know what I mean? So that Ford can make 1,100 foot-pound of torque, at the bottom of the hill, but by the top, maybe it's only making 850 because it's got too hot. You know what I mean? So the real world is absolutely different, and everybody has a preference in what they drive and how it feels and how it drives. And I don't think you can lose with any three of these. I have never been a Dodge guy. I've always sworn that I'd probably never own one, but I've driven that new 25 Dodge a few times now, and that's a great truck. I would absolutely drive that truck.
The 8-speed transmission, you didn't have any problems with it? It wasn't like skip shifting or like felt like a slush box, like all the classic Dodge stuff. I just imagine that they came out with an 8-speed and it's all worse.
It feels really good to me. Obviously, this is just driving around town. I haven't hooked it up to a trailer or done anything extensive with it. Sure. I've put 50 miles on that truck myself, driving it back and forth to work and through town and on the freeway and that kind of stuff. So it's too early to tell for sure, but daily driving that truck was great. It's better than the previous Rams that I've driven. We had a 21 truck here with the Azen, and it was like the least favorite truck in our fleet. If I had the choice of anything, that was the bottom of the list. I just did not like driving that truck.
Yeah.
So This the 25 feels really nice. I'm really impressed. And Ram's interiors have really stepped up in these 5th-gen trucks.
Yes, in a
So
big way.
not a whole lot of complaints for me. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out in the long run for them. With that new powertrain, how everything comes together, and long term, if they have any issues in 50,000 miles or 100,000 miles. We know that the Fords are plagued with their CP4 issues and that kind of stuff. So, they all have different little bugs in them, but I don't think you can go wrong with any 3 of these trucks right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of how I've always seen it is it's, pick your flavor, right? Like they're all great trucks. They're all going to get the job done. None of them are going to leave you feeling like, oh, I made the wrong choice, right? Your buddy's not going to pull up in the other one and you drive it and you like massively regret your decision. Right. I think they're all fairly similar. I will say, like you said, that Ford, they have been making gains in the last 10 years in the diesel space that is worth noting. I've never been a Ford guy. I've always been closer to the Chevy or the Dodge aspect of things. But man, those Fords, they really have been making some strides. The power they put down is insane. I would push back when people say this isn't real world. This is pretty real world. This is a great representation of the real world. This is pushing the truck in a high stress scenario and equally testing them next to each other, right? Like there are a lot of other variables and other tests that you can run out there that may show one or the other is better or worse. Right. But right. Knowing what your baseline of power is a great jumping off point. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Some of those flaws, it all depends. If you have a CP4 failure and it takes out your entire injection system, you will hate anything that has a CP4. You would take less power. You would take a worse interior. You would take 3 wheels. Whatever it is, you would take over that failure. But the same thing would be said if you had a transmission fail in the first 30,000 miles.
For sure.
You would never touch that brand ever again, right? Or maybe you would, whatever.
Right.
So there's some push and pull on this stuff, but man, thinking about these trucks and these numbers, this is what tuned horsepower looked like. Some of this with a built transmission 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, we're getting ready to release our module for the 23 and newer Ford. So for the standard output and the high output, it releases in 6 days to the market.
So cool.
So that module in the high output Ford, we made 1,300 foot-pound of torque in a stock truck with just our module.
Wow.
It's like that's twin turbo territory 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
It is.
Like,
it is.
It's unbelievable. Like we joke about it here at the house or at the office. And, we've got some cameras set up in the dyno when we're making some dyno pulls for our marketing content and that kind of stuff. And to see one of those trucks squat and stretch the straps on the dyno, it's like we used to see this and be like, we used to enjoy watching that happen at our dyno events when these guys were coming in with their big modified trucks that they couldn't drive on the street anymore. You know what I mean? And we've got a freaking bone stock Ford with a 60 horsepower module in it that's stretching our ratchet straps and squatting the suspension, on the rollers. And it's like, man, it's crazy. Like everybody here is joking. It's like, man, when you're ready to move, just let us know. We'll bring the truck, and you don't even have to unpack the house. We'll just hook up to the front door and take it where you want to go. It's like, it's crazy to think that this is where factory equipment is nowadays.
Yeah. And this is all with emissions equipment.
Shoot for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It used to be delete the truck so you could make 500 horsepower. Now it's from the factory with the whole emissions equipment, easily making 500. And even on the other ones that aren't necessarily at 500 at the wheels today, with a tune, they are, and they still run with the emissions equipment. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the emissions equipment? Because I know we get a lot of hate for not deleting, for not being open advocates of delete. Has the emissions equipment, in your opinion or your experience, gotten more reliable?
Absolutely, without question, no doubt. It's unknown what that's going to mean in 10 years. You look at an 07.5 to an 09 Dodge Cummins, and they're an emissions equipment nightmare now. You know what I mean? They're 10 years old, 150, 200,000 miles on them. It's that equipment just doesn't have the life in it. You know what I mean? Are we going to be saying that about a 2025 Ford in 10 years? I don't know. You know what I mean? So we don't know what the long term is of this emission equipment, but the factory technology is without question better than it's ever been on that side of things. And in my opinion, in a new truck, I don't see an advantage to deleting it. Just to say you deleted it. You know what I mean? They're not really picking up any power. There's not, if you're in a Ford application, there's not a performance calibration available. Nobody's cracked the code yet. Like I said, we're going to release our inline module for those trucks in a week. That'll start adding power to those trucks. I think we'll be the first to market to add power to a 23 and newer Ford. But, if you're deleting it, you're putting a stock calibration back in that truck. So you're not gaining any horsepower. Even in some of the other applications, even in the Dodge and the Chevy applications, you're not getting any more horsepower than you would have with an emissions compliant flash. And I don't see them really picking up a whole lot of mileage either. So, I guess I've just been in the emissions compliant realm long enough that I don't see the advantages at this point. Unless you're in a situation where your truck's got 150,000 miles on it and you've got to throw $5,000 worth of emissions equipment at it that's failed, then maybe I could understand it. But again, it's not legal. And if you live in a county that does emissions testing like I do, it's not even an option. You know what I mean? I can't register my truck if it's deleted where I live. So it's not even an option to talk about. But these new trucks, I don't see the reason to delete a 2023, 2024 truck.
I know how mute works. I think the thing that I'm seeing is that there's not that wave of the failure in the first 10,000 miles, right? I think that really puts a horrible taste in a lot of guys' mouths. You have this brand new truck, you've only made a couple of payments on it. Maybe you've had it a year at the most and it's a garage queen, whatever. Yeah. But if you're under 10,000, 20,000, even 50,000 miles and you have emissions equipment failure, that makes you hate emissions equipment. Just there's something about that experience that just connects you to this like deleted at all costs kind of mentality. And in 07.5 to 09, all of the shit failed. It mostly all failed right away. And if it didn't fail right away, it definitely failed by 100,000 miles. All of it definitely failed by 100. It's so rare to get more than that.
And the LML and the L5Ps, they went through that stint where they were having problems with the urea systems. The urea pumps were failing, and then they were on back order. And I can't get a DEF pump for my truck for 6 months. What the heck am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like, there were situations that would cause an owner to despise everything about it. You know.
And I've always said, once they get it to a point that it's reliable enough that it works, you won't care that it's there. Fixing it would be the same as fixing your injectors or a blown out tire or anything else on the truck. You'd be like, well, it usually works. It's extremely rare that these things fail. You just fix it when it fails, right? You just deal with it. And so I'm always hoping that like we're going to cross that threshold, while you and I are still around playing with these trucks, right? like we're going to see reliable emissions equipment to the point that like, there was a day where everybody's mom deleted Cadillac converters off their car because they didn't work. Now your mom would never do that. Like that'd be insanity.
Right.
And the cost, I love that you're still throwing around $5,000. If you look into the cost of some of these, because of having to pay shipping, you can only deal with tuners that are from quote unquote from Canada. Finding them is a nightmare, things like that. It's like just getting all of that worked out. It's on these newer trucks, it's just increasingly more and more of a pain in the ass and less worth it. So I am excited to see kind of where this goes in the future. I know this industry is something that's always rapidly changing and rapidly growing. You said you're 6 days away from a new product launch?
Yeah, so June 26th, we'll launch our module for the 23 and newer Ford. If it's the F-250, the F-350, and the F-450 if it's a pickup truck. We don't have a module for the cab and chassis trucks. But a plug-and-play module, 60 horsepower, 140 foot-pound of torque. It works in both the standard output and the high output. it built-in throttle booster, so you get better throttle sensitivity. It's all smartphone app driven, so everything's controlled from your phone. So yeah, that hits the market in just a couple of days. We've got a new vehicle specific mount that holds the CTS3 that we'll be releasing then for that new Ford as well. So we don't have to use the suction cup mount in that 23 and newer Ford. So we'll be releasing that mount next week. So yeah, we've got some things coming this year. I will also say that 25 Cummins, we've only poked at it for maybe a week or so, and it looks like we're going to be able to see some pretty significant gains in that truck too. Looks like Ram's left a lot on the table. So we've already started doing some stuff there, and that one will be exciting. It'll be exciting to see where that one goes, and see how much closer we can get to that Ford number. So
I love that. I'm so excited for
should
it.
be some good stuff this year.
Jacob, it's always so much fun talking with you. I definitely appreciate you joining me here at Hooked on Diesel.
Yeah, you bet. I'll
If our
join anytime.
listeners,
I'm always willing.
I love it. If our listeners or viewers want to follow along and see more about what Edge has going on, where's the best place for them to go?
Obviously, our social media channels are big. We've got Edge Products on Facebook, Instagram. We have a TikTok, but I'm too old for TikTok, so I'm not very good at keeping that one up to speed. That's a generation behind me. But obviously, we've got a YouTube channel. We post a lot of videos, installation videos for all of our products, step-by-step installation stuff on YouTube. And then obviously you can visit the website, edgeproducts.com. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, viewers, if you're listening to this in the audio version, that's awesome. Keep doing that. Make sure you subscribe. If you're watching this, a like and a subscribe goes a long way, really helps out the channel. For today, I've been Paul Wilson, and this is Hooked on Diesel.